Creating believable villains that readers love to hate. Your antagonists are as important as your protagonists. They need to be people that your readers can connect with, but not exactly love. Like, you have to love to hate them. So let's continue here. So villainy. I have a really great quote from Alfred Hitchcock about that. The more successful the villain, the more successful the picture. And I think he's really correct, because when we talk about villains, there's, I'm sure, a number of them come to your mind, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. So one of my favorite quotes for one of my books was Touch of Power. And it was filled with Snyder's trademark sarcastic humor, fast-paced action, and creepy villainy. Touch of Power is a spellbinding romantic adventure that will leave readers salivating for the next book in the series. And that was from USA Today. And I love that review, because they really got it. Like, they, you know, my villain is was an interesting, complex character, and they picked up on that, which was a lot of fun. And we're going to take a look at him in a little bit more detail coming up. Okay, so your job as a writer is to make your villains credible, logical, and believable, but not likable. Okay, you don't want your readers caring more about your villain than they do for your protagonist, but you still have to make them basically understandable. You know, that readers need to understand why a villain is doing what they're doing and why they believe their actions are justified and rational. And in a nutshell, we have basically your villains need to be real three-dimensional people. So what you need to do as an author is to get inside your villain's head. And how you do that is you have to create, just like your protagonist, your antagonist must have a complex backstory with emotions, motivations, fears, quirks. I mean, they need all of that. They can't just be one-dimensional. So pure evil and over-the-top villains, they're weak. You know, they're hard to believe. Cliches like the evil stepmother and the evil twin, you know, are kind of hard to pull off. And plus, they've been done quite a bit. And, you know, the same with serial killers, drug dealers, like the stalker, like Alex Farce. You can use those stereotypes if you bring something new to it, you know, something that hasn't been done. And you don't use that. You can't just say, well, he's a serial killer, so he's bad, and that's all the work I need to do. No, you need to know why he's doing this. What is his motivations, his goals, and we will get to that. All right, so author as psychologist. I mean, if your villain has a mental disorder, you need to do the research, okay, and possible hire a sensitivity reader, because you really do not want to offend anyone who's like neurodivergent or has a different way of looking at things, or things like that. You need to be really sensitive. And just because they have a disorder, like if they're a psychopath or a sociopath, is not an excuse for what they do, because not every sociopath is going around being killing people. I mean, to some of them, you wouldn't even know. So yes, your villains need goals, they need motivation, and of course they need conflict, because if they're a supervillain and nobody gets in their way, then that's, you know, that's not much. You don't have much of a story in that way. So we're going to look at all three aspects of your villain. So villainy goals. Okay, basically a goal is, what do they desire? What do they want? Need, or what's their purpose? What is it that they want more than anything else? Like, they have a goal. So think of, I'm trying to think of, like, you know, Voldemort. What was his goal? Okay, he wanted to come back. He wanted to be back as himself, and of course reclaim the power that he had, you know, at that time. So that was his goal. And usually when you have one villain, you have one goal. In the case with Voldemort, you know, he had a series of steps that he needed to do in order to get to his goal. So, and there were other villains, of course, along the way for Harry Potter, but that was a longer series. But when you're starting out with your antagonists, usually you have your villain, you know, and then they have their goal. And it needs to be important and urgent to the story, because it drives the action. You know, there's a reason, you know, Voldemort wants to come back. So he's, you know, he has to do a certain series of steps, and they have to be done in a certain timeline, or, you know, he needs to acquire things like the Sorcerer's Stone to help him achieve that goal. And of course, at the time, they're trying to keep that from him. So that's conflict, which we'll get to. I know I say that a lot. Smaller goals can lead to bigger goals. There's a series of steps. So, your villain doesn't just have this one big thing. Think of somebody who's trying to like set off a bomb in a public place. Well, they have to have access to all the bomb making materials, and they have to get access to the place to set it up. And, there's a lot of different little steps that they have to do in order to achieve their goal. Deadlines and ticking clocks really do help increase the tension. If your villain has a certain timeline, like, okay, everybody's going to be on this train at this time, and I want to target that train because it's going to be filled with the most people. So things like that, or there's going to have a gala in the White House, and there'll be all these dignitaries there, and so I have to target the White House on a certain day. And yet nobody, please send this to the FBI. This is all for writing purposes. Okay, oh, there's my little graphic behind me. It's just a lady with a ticking clock. Okay, failure should have a consequence. If they miss their deadline. Okay, well, we missed the 12 o'clock train, but now we have the 3 o'clock train, but it's only half filled with people. Or the important person we wanted to target is no longer going to be there at this time. Now we have to think of a new time or a new location. So there's a consequence there for failing to reach the goal or the smaller goal on the way. And they can change. Your goals can change if the story changes, but it has to be a reason for it. It can't just be because all of a sudden you decided, well, I don't want my villain to like blow up the stadium anymore. I just want them to target this one person instead. Well, why did that change? Like, what happened? Well, perhaps the villain learned something or decided he wasn't going to target a bunch of innocent civilians, instead wanted to target maybe more military personnel because they had to change a heart or something happened. As long as there's a reason for it, you can change the goal. I think I'm trying to think, the Harry Potter, he was pretty dead set on what he was doing. So he didn't really change it as he went through. And so when you're talking goals, there's these internal goals and external goals. And there's like, okay, what's the difference? The difference is an internal goal is more of an emotional goal, and an external goal is more of a physical. So the physical is, let's blow up this train and kill all these people. Well, what is the emotional goal? Well, that's like satisfaction of like ruining a bunch of people's lives. I mean, so that goes along with the goal. So there's internal and external goals, and you need to know that as an author, what your protagonist, not your protagonist, your antagonist has, like, reasons, the internal and external goals. So here's a really nice little table that I made up, and when I teach this in person, I do have a sheet here, but it's really easy to do in Word or Excel. And feel free to screenshot this or take a picture of it. It's a really helpful thing, and you can use it for all your characters. You don't just have to use it for your antagonist.